Hey, what's up guys, it's Bakes here and thank you for joining me for today's TerraVision review. And even though this is only the second episode in my TerraVision review series, this is going to be the first time I actually tackle a whole season of a show, so I'm very excited to get into this review. And it was really cool to revisit this show in particular. It's one that came out in 2021, or at least the first season of it did, played on the Sci-Fi channel, and it is Chucky Season 1. So before I get into my review and thoughts on this series, this is a show that I had watched once before. I've only seen season 1 the one time, and it was a little bit of a while ago, so like I said, it was cool to go back and revisit it. But before I get into my thoughts of it, I'll quickly just fill in a little bit of context on where in the franchise the TV show fits in, just for those who are unaware. So this fits in on the main original timeline of the Child's Play films, so from the original Child's Play all the way to Cult of Chucky, so 7 films. After Cult of Chucky came out, I think there was just sort of poor reception around the later entries in the Child's Play franchise. So the idea for an 8th film, I remember it was like, the idea of an 8th film was getting tossed around after Cult of Chucky and whatever, but it ended up getting scrapped, and then, you know, a few years down the track we heard that Don Mancini, who was running the Child's Play franchise, decided to come out with a TV show, and yeah, that's how it sort of came about. I think at the same time, I can't remember what year the Child's Play remake came out, but, you know, it was sort of like 2 alternative versions of the franchise battling out, so it was like, you know, what's going to be better, the remake or, you know, the series that's going on. But either way, talking about this one, I know it's going to sound maybe a little bit out of context, but I do want to fill in quickly my thoughts on Cult of Chucky, because like I said, that was the last movie that we got in the original Child's Play franchise before Chucky Season 1. And the reason why I want to fill in my thoughts quickly of Cult of Chucky is because like I said, there was originally going to be a follow-up film to Cult of Chucky, so there was a lot of things left open in the air, and because they didn't have a movie to conclude it, a lot of it sort of gets carried over to this show. So I guess I should talk about my thoughts on Cult, just very quick in a nutshell. So Cult of Chucky, when it first came out, I remember a lot of people being like, yeah, this actually wasn't too bad, pretty solid follow-up to a good Child's Play sequel being Curse of Chucky. And the first time I seen Cult, I thought the same thing. I'm like, you know what, wasn't too bad. I actually enjoyed that for what it was. It's one that I've only seen maybe 2-3 times, but the more I thought about Cult of Chucky, and every time that I revisited the film since, it's just gone down and down for me. Like, it's probably average at best. There's a few things in Cult of Chucky that work, and, you know, I don't mind, but overall it's not one that I'm a massive fan of. So coming into this one, you know, there was a lot of things up in the air. Like I said, they didn't get to conclude it with an 8th film, so I knew there was things that needed to be answered, but as I said, early reception from this show, I heard a lot of people saying that it was pretty good, so I was keen to check it out. So yeah, without delaying any longer, let's get into my thoughts of Chucky Season 1. For those who have been watching my channel for a while now, or, you know my opinions on horror movies and whatever, you guys would know how much I love the Child's Play franchise. Even the weaker films, they just have something that I still hold on to just because I love Child's Play and Chucky so much. So the idea of this TV show on paper was something that could work for me, but like I said, just with how Cult of Chucky ended, and I knew they had to, you know, tie those loose ends, I was a little bit cautious going into this one, and especially after rewatching it for the second time around for this TerraVision review, I kind of feel like Chucky Season 1 is the best of a bad scenario coming off the end of Cult of Chucky, or ending the Don Mancini film franchise. And maybe, like, best of a bad scenario isn't the right word. Maybe best of, like, a unpreferable scenario, you know? Like I said, this show had good reception at first when it first came out. I remember a lot of people going, like, the Chucky TV show is, like, 10 times better than it deserves to be. But then over time, I feel like a lot of people have flipped their opinions on that, like pretty much a 180. And I think they've flipped their opinions on Chucky Season 1 because of 2 reasons. One, the rose-coloured glasses have come off. You know, for a long time we didn't have any Chucky or Child's Play content. So, you know, seeing a fresh new show was just something awesome, and everyone was like, yeah. But now that time has worn on, everyone's like, fuck, like, maybe the show wasn't as good as what we first thought. But then the other thing is, I also think After Chucky season 2 and 3 have come out, a lot of people have looked back on Chucky season 1 going, okay, maybe it wasn't as good as what we thought. Because I remember reception for Chucky season 2 was 50-50. I didn't love season 2, to be honest. I think a lot of people were kind of just claiming they liked season 2, but whatever. And I haven't seen season 3 yet, but I heard a lot of people say that it's not very good, and the show's been cancelled since season 3 has come out. So I feel like a lot of people have flipped their opinion on this show. Like I said, I feel like, especially after a second time watch, it's the best of a unpreferable scenario, but the show still isn't that bad. At least this season isn't that bad. So I guess I should quickly get into the plot for the show, because I never really did. So one great thing about the show is the ball gets rolling straight away, which is good because we know who Chucky is. Yes, we're getting introduced to some new characters and everything, but the show opens by our main character Jake. He's at like this yard sale, comes across a good guy's doll who is Chucky, takes him home. Jake's a little bit of an outcast. He shouldn't be as outcasted as he is in this show. I'll get into his character a little bit later, but he's a bit of an outcast kid. Takes Chucky with him, and straight away things start to go awry. People start to get injured or worse, and he's thinking, what the hell's going on? Chucky reveals his true colors to him, and it's sort of set up to be like Chucky is going to be his mentor or his protector, and that's sort of the first wavelength of the show, and it goes into different directions, which I guess I can kind of get into, but that's the main gist of the show. With it being a show, it does feel very over dramatized. There's a big use of like modern music, and when I say modern music, like this edgy, moody, almost songs that you would find on like TikTok or Instagram or whatever. And I say that for a show because it is very typical for shows on the Sci-Fi Channel or CW, which the show feels very much of those tones. To have over dramatization and use of like that kind of music and whatever. So there's a lot of that in the show. Like I said, I guess I should cover the characters. So starting with the title character, Chucky. Brad Dourif as the voice of Chucky. I mean, he has not missed a beat. He is still just great. And the animatronics are still incredible. And, Chucky's got his moments to shine for sure in the show. So if you're worried about anything from Chucky's point of view in here, it's mostly pretty solid. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. Our main character in the show is a kid named Jake. I feel like I've heard a lot of people be pretty negative on Jake. I've heard a lot of people say that they're not a fan of him being the main character of the show. I think I've just heard kind of people say that he's annoying or whatever. I don't find him to be annoying. I actually like him as a lead. He is, as I said, an outcast. He's just got some weird interests, but to be honest, like, he's not that, like, weird of a kid, but he gets bullied like crazy. Like, he is probably one of the most bullied characters I've ever seen in any form of media, and all of it is undeserving. Like, he gets, like, bullied the shit out of in this show, and no one really defends him or stands up for him, and whenever he stands up for himself, he gets in trouble. He is also a gay character, as in, he's... gay. I don't know where I was going with that explanation. But I do like the fact that, his character isn't just like a token gay, or, they don't feel out like, it doesn't feel like a stereotype. His character isn't the fact that he's gay. He just happens to be gay, if that makes sense. I felt like that was refreshing and cool to see. But yeah, like I said, a lot of people sort of shit on his character and haven't been the biggest fan of him. That's a big complaint I've heard from the show in general, but I like him. I think he's cool. Another main character that we get is sort of the main bully, Lexi. She's probably my favourite character in the show. The first time I watched Chucky Season 1, I hated her, but I think her performance, whoever plays Lexi, her performance is so good, to the point where, like, she's playing a bully so well that it's, like, annoying me. And knowing what I was getting myself into rewatching Season 1 for the second time round now, it was so refreshing to be like, okay, I know what's coming. I took the weight off my shoulders, and, like, she was such a fun character. She gets away with the most diabolical bullying in this show, And there's moments where, they set up, oh, she's got her comeuppance and, things are starting to not go her way and whatever. Not really. Like, she is one of the worst fucking bullies, does the most horrendous things. Nobody calls her out. It's mind-boggling, like, her character. But, like, as I said, knowing what I was getting myself into this time around, I just loved it. I loved her character in this show. I know it's a terrible thing to say, especially some of the things that she does in this show. Like, it's hideous, but, like, yeah, it was fucking awesome character. You've got the love interest slash friend, Devon there. He does, like, podcasting, and he sort of knows the history of the town, and he's sort of like the knowledgeable one and sort of the grounded character. And I guess the main one left to sort of cover is Jake's cousin, Junior. The actor that plays Junior actually showed up in the new Final Destination movie playing the brother Charlie. That was a cool surprise. The first time around watching the show, I remembered him being like a major bully, like a bigger figure. But rewatching the show this time around, he's actually not that prominent in the show. And the times that he's there, though, he is impactful, and like nothing to do with the performance, as in, memorable or impactful or whatever. He gets the job done, but I remembered him being more of like a central bully alongside Lexi, because they're also dating. But yeah, cool, and I'll just leave it there. The weird thing about the kids in the show, they're meant to be 13, 14 years old. They don't look 13 or 14. They don't act 13 or 14. I know, like, nowadays kids are 10 years old and they're acting like they're adults now. But yeah, I don't see a problem with having them in the age bracket of 16, 17. I know it's not a major jump, but in the show they're said to be 13, 14, and they just don't feel it. That was a little bit off. The humour in this show, obviously with, as I said, Don Mancini running the ship of the original Child's Play series, he's inserted a lot of humour into the Child's Play franchise, especially in the later half, to the point where it's almost more comedy than horror, which is a bit annoying, but it doesn't feel too bad in the show, especially in the first half. The humour is more acceptable. A lot of the humour that I found is a lot more tongue-in-cheek. Like I said, the bullying and like how over the top some of the things are, I'm like, this is fucking ridiculous. All you can do is kind of laugh. So it's not as bad as what it has been at some points in the franchise, but in the second half of the show it does get a little bit more out there. Yeah, again, most of the laughs that I get is from the bullying in the show and like the lack of consequences. Like, there's a scene at the talent show where Jake's in the crowd, Lexi is hosting, and she is like bullying Jake in front of the whole school, in front of all the teachers, in front of the parents, and people are laughing, people are heckling Jake, and then Jake gets on stage and Chucky does his thing and pretends to be like controlled by Jake, and he's actually just roasting everybody, and everyone's like, oh, Jake, that was way out of line. It's like, what the fuck? Like, she gets no consequences, everyone just bullies him, like, not just for the fact of being weird, or like people bully him, as I said, for being gay. It's like, I don't remember anyone getting bullied this much for being gay when I was in school. Like, I went to school with people who were gay, and it's like, I don't remember anyone like getting bullied this hard for it. Maybe it's just, it's hard to share experiences when I'm a straight male and I can't put myself in their shoes, but like, it's just so over the top, the bullying in this show. Yeah, and I think like it's not just the over the top bullying. There's a lot of like suspending your disbelief. Like, there's a part in the first episode where Jake has to dissect a frog in the science class, and the science class is full of like 20 kids, and he turns away because he's like gagging or something, and then he looks back and Chucky has like sliced this frog up on the table and like dismembered it, limbs everywhere. You're trying to tell me that no one in this fucking classroom saw that happen? Like, there's 20 kids all together. Like, you didn't see this doll climb on the table and rip apart a frog. There's tons of things like that, and that's just a small example. But yeah, I think like there's a lot of things that you sort of would expect from the Chucky TV show, and things that would surprise people that isn't actually that bad. So story-wise, with Chucky Season 1, it really is a season of two halves. The first half is following this new story where it doesn't really have too much of a connection to the movies yet. Like, you know it's coming because, like I said, with the end of Cult of Chucky, there are so many loose ends up in the air. You know it's eventually going to come, but the first half of the show, I really do prefer. It feels a lot more small scale, grounded. Yes, there are some over the top and wacky things like I was talking about, but it does feel almost like scary enough where it's like, okay, like Curse of Chucky sort of territory where, there's still one-liners and ridiculous shit going on, but it's like, okay, like this is something that I'm really vibing with. But like I said, you're holding your breath because you know that these loose ends are eventually going to be wrapped up. The second half of the show is where it becomes, first of all, more grand. Like I said, the first half of the season is like dealing with this core group of friends, and yes, maybe their families and a few others get involved, but in the second half it becomes like a whole town problem, and like everyone's in danger. And as I said, it becomes a lot more wacky, a lot more over the top, and definitely where it starts to tie in with Cult of Chucky and the later films in the Child's Play film franchise. There's small callbacks early on in the show, and I think they actually do a very good job of not feeling forced or nostalgia baiting, but also do enough to the point where it's filling in the blanks for those who haven't seen the films, or maybe haven't seen the films in a while and need a refresher. They'll be reading through articles and it calls back to when Charles Lee Ray was a human, and you're like, okay, like that's pretty cool. And there's even small flashbacks of parts in the film franchise and parts out of the franchise that are just filling in the blanks, filling in time that, were never answered for within the films, and it's like, okay, this is kind of cool. Another thing that it does well, for a first season of a show that is a spin-off of a film series, you're worried that it's going to feel disconnected. For the most part, it does feel pretty connected and makes the world feel pretty lived in, which is definitely a benefit because, you don't want it feeling too jarring and you're like, okay, like, what the fuck, they're just trying to grasp at connections here. No, it does a pretty good job at making that connection pretty smoothly. But like I said, the second half is where, unfortunately, it probably ties into the movies a little bit more. And as I said, like, I really liked the grounded approach of the first half of the season, but when it gets into the second, spoiler alert, it introduces a lot of like legacy characters that I guess were not really hidden for the fact that they were going to be returning in this show. So you have Nika, who is played by Fiona Dorff, Brad Dourif's daughter. She played Nika in Curse of Chucky and Cult of Chucky, and her whole story was left in the air, so you knew she was going to come back. Obviously Tiffany, and then I think at the end of Cult, if I remember correctly, Andy and Kyle, they were teaming up to take out, all the Chuckies and whatever. So you knew that they were going to come back, and even though, again, it's feeling like a little bit too much, and I'm like, oh, that's not really my thing, by that point in the season, at least it's like something different. I don't know, like, I'm grasping at things to like enjoy about it. It's not the worst, but again, it's not something that I necessarily prefer or favour. So this is a show of 8 episodes. Each episode is roughly like 35, 45 minutes, something like that. Just off the top of my head, I didn't really take note. But at least the show doesn't really feel like it's dragging. It just really depends on what kind of episode you're sitting through and what your preference is. Like I said, the second half of the show is a lot more nostalgia and connecting to the movies. And even though that's not my thing, that might be your thing and you're not really vibing with the first half. It really just depends on what episode you get. But for the most part, I feel like it runs pretty smooth and it never really feels like it's a show that's necessarily dragging. The first couple of episodes, honestly, are like a really strong start to the season. Like, as much as I'm sort of teetering on my words and I'm like, it's a good show, but nothing special and whatever, the first couple of episodes of this show are genuinely pretty fucking solid. And I'm like, okay, like, not too many notes to hand out yet. Like, it's a strong start to Chucky Season 1. You get a good grasp on the characters' personalities and their relationships with, the other characters coming in. By the start of Episode 2, you sort of understand everybody's stance on each other and their personalities and everything, so that's really good. Again, like I said earlier, the ball gets rolling like straight away, which is nice because, we know that Chucky's alive. Yes, these characters don't, but, it doesn't keep us holding our breath of like, oh, is this actually Chucky or whatever? We know it is. So, as I said, ball gets rolling straight away. We know our characters. It's really good. I think the highlight of Episode 1 is that talent show, which I brought up earlier. It's a great scene to like sort of start off the show on a strong note. It's over the top. It's also funny. It's a little bit scary. I don't know. I feel like that scene is like the perfect encapsulation of like what you should show someone of season 1 to like see if they're on board for it or not. Episode 2 is set on Halloween, and again, the Halloween vibe is very welcoming, very cool. I don't think we've seen Chucky in a Halloween setting yet in any of the movies or anything like that, so that was cool. There's a big party scene which is also very impactful. That is where you see Lexi do probably the most diabolical, hideous thing, and nobody calls her out on it. So yeah, like, that's wild. So the first 2 episodes really, really strong. Episode 3 is okay, but it starts to slow down a bit. It's a lot more character building, but you sort of, that is where you get the whole storyline of what I was talking about in the intro, where you go, okay, is Chucky meant to be Jake's mentor and like push Jake to a point where he's like, okay, is Jake gonna be a problem out there? Also with like, is Chucky meant to be Jake's protector, like doing the dirty deeds for Jake? Like, it's a bit of a weird one, but that's where most of like that character development comes in during episode 3. But for me, episode 4 is my favorite episode. I think episode 4 is really fucking cool. So first of all, episode 4 is set in a hospital. The hospital setting is awesome. The aesthetic of the hospital is really cool. It's not practical at all because there is like no lights in this hospital other than like these neon beams. So I don't know how anything is getting done in this hospital, but it looks really cool. And honestly, that was actually one of my favorite things about Cult of Chucky as well, even though I've, you know, sort of changed my mind on the film in general and it's not one I'm a massive fan of. The hospital setting in Cult of Chucky was awesome. Like these kind of the opposite, bright white hallways and rooms and everything, awesome. The snowy aesthetic, really cool. This one, as I said, dark neon lights, but it just really fucking works. Having everyone in one place, like every character that plays a central role or sort of a half role and whatever is in this hospital. It's really cool just to have them all in one space. Spoiler alert, but Chucky has this melted face look in this episode, and just seeing this melted Chucky sitting in hospital rooms and stuff, it's really fucking cool. Episode 4 is my favorite. It's probably the most memorable episode for me as well. I really dig it. Over the halfway mark is where it feels a little bit more, like I said, a follow-up to Cult of Chucky, with the storylines welcoming legacy characters. It's not all bad. Tiffany and Nika, have the hottest introduction. Fiona Dorff, oh my gosh, what's her name? Jennifer Tilly, I can't believe I forgot her name. Fiona Dorff, Jennifer Tilly in lingerie, making out. Oh, does it get fucking better than that? That is way out of context. Watch the show to be filled in on what's going on there. But it's the hottest introduction to 2 characters of all time. The flashbacks I actually really enjoy. There's some flashbacks of Chucky and Tiffany's sort of, I guess you could call it like honeymoon era, where they're like first met and they're like younger and everything. They're obviously both still humans at this time. And I think it's fucking awesome. Like, I really fucking dig it. I don't think it's the actual characters portraying, you know, a young Brad Dourif and young Jennifer Tilly speaking. I think, you know, they're miming and they're speaking over their parts, but like just their mannerisms and like the writing for those characters, and as I said, the actual performances, I find those flashbacks to be really, really entertaining. At least that's a strong part of the second half of the show. So I knew after covering a whole season of a show rather than a standalone anthology episode like I have in my previous episode of my TerraVision reviews, that this video was going to go a little bit longer, but I'm going to try and wrap it up now because I've pretty much said everything that I want to say. The real like point that I'll ram home is what I said earlier. It feels like this show is the best of an unpreferable scenario. At least the first season is. Like I said, you'll hear a lot of people sort of maybe diss Chucky season 1 and everything, when the show actually isn't that bad. It could have been way worse, like right from the start. It could have been a direct follow-up to Cult, like right from the get-go. And it's like, no. I like the refreshing start to this show. Yes, it goes a little bit out there when it gets into the like Army of Chucky angle that comes from Cult of Chucky. Again, sort of spoilers there with the soul splitting and whatever. Just feels a little bit too much. Andy and Kyle's involvement, again, nothing special, but in the scenario that's there coming from Cult of Chucky, it's fine. even though there are highlights mostly from the first half, the second half isn't terrible. It's nice to see these actors return to their roles regardless. Filling in the gaps for Chucky and Tiffany is, as I said, honeymoon era. That's a highlight of the second half. I don't know, like, it just really feels like the ending of Chucky Season 1 is kind of like Don Mancini rubbing his hands together going, finally, now I can get back to what I was doing. And, I'm happy that Don Mancini was keeping the original timeline of Child's Play alive, but his type of humour, like I said, he was taking it in a comedy direction rather than a horror direction. And his type of humour, like, Chucky can be funny. In the first 3 Child's Play movies, like the OG ones, hilarious. Even in Bride of Chucky, he's funny and whatever. And there are moments where I'll laugh in Curse and Cult and what am I missing? Seed, for sure. Even Seed, I fucking hate Seed, but there's moments where I'll laugh. But he's just taken it in this direction, and I can tell by the end of Chucky Season 1, he goes, finally. Season 2 is pretty much just going to be what I wanted this show to, my 8th movie to be. Because that's what it was meant to be, an 8th movie, but I just feel like this show could have been worse than what it is. It's probably gone down from me from the first time watching it, but again, I kind of felt like it would. Giving Chucky Season 1 a score out of 10, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Like, it's watchable. It really is. It's not that bad at all. Unfortunately, the show gets worse as it goes on. Chucky Season 2 isn't the greatest, and, there was people defending Season 2. I haven't heard one person defend Season 3, so yeah, pretty much said everything I want to say. Thank you for joining me for this random horror review. If you have other thoughts on the Chucky TV show, let me know. I'm sorry this was a longer video. Hopefully it's not dragging and you guys have watched all the way to the end. But thank you for joining me, and I'll see you for another video soon. Peace.